This is The Roadmap with Lee Heisman.
Hello everyone and welcome to The Roadmap exclusively here on ASBN.com. I'm Lee Heisman and every week we bring you some of the brightest entrepreneurs, CEOs and business owners who are climbing the ladder, scaling their businesses and thinking about how one day to exit stage left. Today a very special guest, Anthony Urbaites. Anthony, thank you for joining.
Thank you, Lee, for having me.
Absolutely. Senior Principal of the Keystone Consulting Group. I want to get into that.
Sure.
At some point, but initially, the time that we spent together, you're just an onion, just has layers peeled back. Every time we turn and talk about something, you have so much knowledge in so many different areas. Talk about how you cut your teeth in business.
Sure. So I was an engineer that never wanted to be a true engineer. So did my engineering work in upstate New York, grew up in New York City, got out of there as fast as I could. Great place to visit, tough place to live. And ended up working for Nestle in the Midwest at their biggest chocolate and confections plant. 500 people, 40 acres.
Did you have unlimited access to chocolate?
We did. And people would come in and they'd be like this, and then 20 years later they'd be like this.
No.
Because there were buckets of it in every conference room.
Wow.
Literally buckets. And so I was in industrial engineering and operations back then, and really found myself after the first 4 years, I didn't see myself staying there because I wanted to go 85 miles an hour with my hair on fire. And at Nestle, you could do anything you wanted to between these two walls. And great company, but my time was coming to an end. And so I did what people do when they don't know what they want to do, and that's go back to school. So I went to Kellogg, got my MBA at Northwestern, did it while I was working. So I was driving 160 miles round trip, 2 to 3 nights a week for 2.5 years.
Wait, how long is that trip?
In Chicago traffic, 2 to 3 hours.
So just to get to class,
Correct.
Get back.
Correct.
These were not automatic driving cars back in the day?
Not in the day.
Holy
not in the day.
mackerel.
Yes. Eventually I was able to take classes at the Evanston campus, so I didn't have to go downtown, so that made it better. Then I went through recruiting. I found a company called Keystone, and I worked for the Keystone Group, which is this boutique management consultancy we'll talk about.
And how long ago was this?
This was 20 plus years ago.
Wow.
So I was with Keystone for a bit, and then one of my clients hired me away to go run their manufacturing business. And it was a ceramics company in Louisville, Kentucky, which I ran for 3 years. After that, I started my own consulting shop, which I ran for 7 years, and then came back to Keystone in 2000.
And why did you stop your own consulting shop?
What I found after doing it for 7 years is I had something I couldn't sell. And I wanted to create value for my clients, which I did, but along the way, it was really just me and maybe a 1099 or two, and I didn't have something that I was able to build and sell. And so that was kind of the impetus for coming back to Keystone or looking to do something else.
So talk about that transition. Hey, I need an entity. I don't like this what I'm doing because I can't have something to sell. How do you pick up the phone and call Keystone again?
So I didn't. They called me. So in 2012, one of the guys I had kept in touch with, he called me. He said, hey, what are you doing? We're looking to bring back some experienced talent, and we'd love to talk to you if you're interested at all. And I said, well, your timing is pretty good. I've been starting to think about that. And so I went up to Chicago. I talked to the folks, many of whom I worked with 10 years prior, and they said, come on back.
So talk about that. That was what year?
That was 2012.
2012. So we're here 13 years later, if I can do addition, of course. Talk about being a senior principal. You didn't come back in as a senior principal.
Correct. I came back as a principal.
Okay.
But senior principal basically has sales responsibilities and project responsibilities. So 60% of my time I deliver work, I manage projects, I manage multiple teams, and then 25% of the time I sell work or market, and then the balance is mentoring the youth and doing kind of firm development initiatives.
So, a lot of people out there, entrepreneurs, don't understand what a consulting group is, right? And all the services that you offer. Because I said early on about the onion, you seem to know so much about so many things, right? The master of the trade of everything.
So we're a generalist firm by nature. So we want our people to work across all areas of the firm. So not just doing M&A work, not just doing operations improvement work, not just doing growth strategy or turnaround work, but we want them working across all those verticals. So they develop those broad skills. The other benefit it has is for our clients, when they call us back, because 60, 70% of the time we do repeat work for our clients, they call us back and they say, hey, you helped me in a turnaround. Well, now we're steady and we want to grow. How do we do that? We're $100 million today, we want to be $500 million in a few years. How do we do that? Or we have 5 plants and they're running at 50% capacity. We think we can close one. We don't know which one we should close or what to make where. So the advantage is we're able to solve multiple problems for them, and I don't have to say, hold on, let me go get the M&A guy. Or
So
the
yeah, you're
operations guy.
cross-pollinated and
Correct.
cross-trained, is that right?
Correct.
So go ahead.
Now, by nature, because I have an engineering and operations background, I tend to do more of the operations type stuff because that's what I'm good at, it's what I enjoy. So I wouldn't say it's a specialization, but it's more focus.
Sure, but everybody has their specialization, but
As
it's
you get more
cross-trained.
senior, that happens, yes.
So more senior. I'm still older than you. I'm still older than you. So you're not that senior yet. Talk a little bit. You know the space that we're in, and we talk about M&A, mergers and acquisitions all the time. We talk about our country today. In our country with immigration and how the new administration has now enforced the border very differently than the previous administration, and in turn, there are a lot of illegal immigrants in this country, that people here that are illegally, that are working very integral jobs in the labor force, landscape organizations, roofing organizations, food industry, manufacturing. Some of the best workers in our country, right, might not have legal status in our country. But in the M&A space, when someone is putting institutional money into a business to make an acquisition, this could be a challenge. You have some experiences with this.
We do. We've had a couple of clients in the last few years who had undocumented workers on the line as operators working on the factory floor. And they just never leveraged some of the tools that were available, E-Verify, some of those systems and tools that are in place. And eventually the government came checking, and they lost significant portions of their workforce.
Well, how did that affect the business?
The business had to replace them with temps who were not as well trained. The performance of the business and the operations declined substantially to the point that we were brought in to help affect a turnaround.
Do you have recommendations that you do for clients in this situation going forward?
Typically, we don't really get involved much on that side, other than leverage the tools that exist. And I think if your hiring process is well defined from the start, then you can avoid a lot of these problems later on.
Yeah, creating the right framework is really, really important.
And people say, well, it's expensive, it takes time. Well, it's more expensive on the back end.
I was going to say, it's more, people's crystal balls aren't that clear sometimes, and it's
Right.
a lot more expensive on the back end. You being an expert in the manufacturing distribution, how do you see that changing over the next 5 years? I mean, I love these mission critical businesses that AI can help, but they're never going to replace, from plumbing, HVAC, electrical.
Right.
It doesn't matter how much AI works, you need these basic service-based industries.
That's right.
What about manufacturing distribution? Things are changing so much in AI.
So we tend to focus on the middle market. And what happens is the large firms make these substantial and speculative, often, investments. And
Give an example of what you mean by that.
They might spend $1 million on digital twin manufacturing, creating a digital model of the product that they're going to produce so that they can test it and design it.
A digital twin, can you just even be more granular with an example?
So if you're building a vehicle or a subcomponent for a vehicle, you'd build it digitally in CAD, and then you'd use software to apply all of the stresses and all of the dynamics to it to see how it performs. And some of that's existed for years on components, but it's getting much more advanced now, and you can do it with entire systems. And so these big companies are making those investments. Well, a small middle market company, they can't afford that yet. But some of these things are starting to slowly trickle down, and you'll see that probably over the next 15, 20 years as these things kind of trickle down. And then the tools will become more affordable, and they'll figure out what works well and what doesn't. Because right now it's a bit like the Wild West. People are throwing a lot of money at it.
Fair. So how is it going to, you think, end up in effect with you? Again, your crystal ball is probably clearer than a lot of other people's.
I mean, if I would speculate, I would say it's going to help improve efficiencies, it's going to improve productivity, it's going to probably, in some cases, it will improve automation, which will reduce the labor component required. However, you're still going to need the technician to either program it or maintain it. So the labor might shift from less skilled to more skilled, and more specialized.
So it's the same adage we've been hearing, that jobs are still going to be available, you just need to change the model of the job a little bit to work with an AI component.
Like right now, one of the challenges most of our clients have trouble with is hiring welders. Welders is a talent that is very, very scarce. And it's in demand. You can make $100,000 easy as a welder these days.
That's amazing. Because AI is not going to do that for you.
Correct, not yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
That's exactly
Not
right.
yet.
Maybe not in our lifetime, no question. So you've had a very vast career. I want you to think about, what was something that you're most proud of, Anthony, in terms of an impact that you made, and not only thinking you're making the impact at the moment, but watching it come to fruition and,
Sure.
and evolve to what your vision was?
Well, I can think of a couple of examples. We did a turnaround on a small electronics company up in Wisconsin, and this would have been maybe about 10 years ago.
Now, for viewers, what do you mean by a turnaround?
So it was a company that defaulted on a loan covenant with a bank, so they had a commercial loan. They did not do what they said they were going to do, and as a result, they broke a covenant in the loan. So their profitability dropped, and it tripped a loan covenant. And when that happens, a bank will typically require that company to hire a consultant. We no longer have confidence that you can run the business, you need outside help. Here's a list of 3 consultants, go select one. And we were selected to help this particular company. And it was about 90 people. It was pretty dysfunctional. It was very few metrics in how they ran the business, despite making very high-end electronics that would be used on satellites and this was components.
So they didn't have a good system internally.
For on the operations side, technically they were fine. But operationally, they were pretty weak.
And Anthony, for viewers out there, it's really important to know, being the entrepreneur for 30 years, most businesses that are growing, and 90% is a nice, small size business, everybody's focused on the product, the service, the product, and they're never rarely focused on the mechanics behind either their financials or even their operational pieces, but they're so focused on the goal, which is, I got to produce that product, right? Which you said,
right.
Technically it's good. So this seems more common than most businesses.
It is, and people rely on, the business relies on people, not process. And when those people leave, then it creates problems.
That's exactly right.
And it's not repeatable, it's not sustainable. And so that's part of what we do.
And scalable.
And scalable. And we help clients develop those processes and have the metrics in place to be able to make things repeatable and scalable.
So what did you do in this case?
So in this case, we did they thought every opportunity was a great opportunity. So they sold a lot of products to government contractors, okay? So long-term programs, but very hard to get, but once you got them, you might have them for 20 years or 30 years. And so they would constantly do samples on every single opportunity that had come up without ever qualifying them to see what's the volume, what's the profitability, can we make this? And so they were really focused on any opportunity was a good opportunity. And we gave them some focus and we say, here are some criteria we developed with them to say, we're gonna have a gating process so that you need to look and say, if it doesn't fit these criteria, we're not gonna bid on it because we have limited resources and we have to focus elsewhere. So that was
really
just one of the
smart.
examples.
And how did you see it come to fruition?
We also did a lot of lean manufacturing work on the process floor. We lowered batch sizes, accelerated manufacturing throughput by about 20%.
So you can see it in the numbers. Is that where you
can.
qualify
Yeah.
your impact?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
do you also qualify your impact that if people left, it's not affecting the process?
Absolutely. You also, typically what you'll see when we do these things, you'll see an increase in retention. Because it's an easier workplace now.
Yeah,
We're
that's
making
a
their
good
lives
point.
easier, and they're winning, and they're reinvesting in the business.
Do you get feedback from people to hear that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Interesting. You
Yeah.
said we're going to say another example.
So I had another client, this was a bigger client, exterior home remodeler, did replacement roofing, siding, windows. And they had been purchased by private equity, and they had grown the business substantially, almost 2x from when they bought it. But they could sell the work, but they couldn't install it at the same pace. So there was an increasing divide and backlog that was growing and unhappy customers who didn't get their windows, their roof, their siding. And we were brought in to help accelerate the throughput. And what's challenging is they were basically a general contractor and a marketing company. They did not did have their own employees that were crews. So they had 184 crews that were installing products all across the country. And they didn't have inventory. Everything was purchased when it was needed, because all windows, if you know this, are custom.
Yeah.
There's no such thing really as a standard window unless you go for the stuff at Home Depot that's on the shelf. So very limited inventory. So on a surface, it's great from a cash flow perspective. The margins were phenomenal, but they were so focused on the sales side of the business, they ignored the operational foundation, which when they tried to apply that much growth to it, just crumbled, and they couldn't scale it. And so we were able to come in, we looked at their operations, and we were able to determine how to improve throughput by about 20% in less than a month. And again, it was metrics, it was focus, it was measurement, and it was changing their process on how they did things to streamline the process, make it faster and easier for the installs to happen.
So, a lot of entrepreneurs, and I know our time flies, but I want one important point for our entrepreneurs out there. they're in there steering their own ship. They don't have a third-party person to give that true vantage point.
Sure.
What would be one piece of advice you'd give to entrepreneurs who are doing it themselves, other than, of course, using your firm or a firm like yours?
Sure.
Any advice you can give someone because of all your years of experience and expertise helping businesses find their issues and grow?
The way I would say it is, I wouldn't ask for help. Okay, even the finest athletes on the planet all have coaches. You don't have to do it alone. You can have a board member, a friend, an advisor, a consultant, whoever. You don't have to do it alone. Ask for help. And obviously these athletes see the benefit of a coach. Otherwise they wouldn't have them.
So I'll end on this. How do you know what the right help is? How do you know where to go to?
I think you ask around in your professional space, in your peer group. There's plenty of organizations out there, professional organizations that have members that help, or call me.
That's what I was going to say. So let's segue into, I can't thank you, Anthony, enough for coming on the show today.
Of course.
Thank you so much. How do people get in touch with you if they need to call you and at least ask for that guidance?
Sure. They can visit our website. It's thekeystonegroup.com. My profile's on there. My contact information is on there, and feel free to reach out.
It's wonderful. Anthony Urbaites, the Greek. I love it. Anthony, thank you so much for Anthony the Greek. Remember there was a guy back in the day.
That's right.
We're going to use that now. Anthony, thank you so much for coming on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so much for joining today. I hope this show was as insightful for you as I know it was for me. We hope to see you again next week for another episode of The Roadmap.
Thanks for watching The Roadmap with Lee Heisman.